What is going on, guys? Today we are making apple fritters. Donuts are amazing, but apple fritters are just something special because, I like apples and I like donuts, and when you combine them, you get an apple fritter, and it is absolutely delicious. With that sugary, sweet glaze on top, we are doing it all today, and my goal with this recipe was make an apple fritter that has comparable calories and protein to a good protein bar. Not one of those 400 calorie meal replacement protein bars. No, I'm talking about a protein bar that's 200 calories or less and has a good amount of protein. We have nailed it with this. This apple fritter has 175 calories and 16 grams of protein. It is ridiculous. So let's jump right into it and, let's hug some cinnamon and nutmeg and make some apple fritters. Welcome to the channel where we use a food scale and not measuring cups or measuring spoons. But get your bowl because we're gonna put a bunch of powders in here first. First is just regular flour. 20 grams of this is going in. So I use regular flour, which means no bubbles and no rise. So I'm gonna use a little bit of baking powder, but if you use self-rising flour, then you don't need any baking powder. Just a pinch, a half teaspoon of baking powder goes right in. And these are protein apple fritters, and the protein isn't coming from chicken breast, it's coming from protein powder. So I use a combination of whey and casein. I use exactly 12 grams of whey and 3 grams of casein. If you don't have casein and you have a whey casein blend, then use that, that's completely fine. If you don't have casein and you just have a whey, that is also completely fine. Just use 15 grams of whey because we need 15 grams of total protein powder. But if you just have casein, do not make this because it will be a disaster. So do not use just casein. It's just gonna be like a moist, sloppy goop that's wet and just not bready, not like an apple fritter. Either use all whey, 15 grams, or 12 grams of whey, 3 grams of casein, or a whey casein blend, but do not use just casein. If you use just casein and you try this and you don't like it, it's not my fault. Use vanilla, use salted caramel, use something that complements apple fritter flavor. Do not use chocolate because it won't be as good. 3 grams of casein. Yes, artificial sweeteners are in the mix. We can't just add sugar. Well, we could, but then it wouldn't be 175 calories. It would be a lot more. So instead, I'm gonna use artificial sweetener, and my gut is strong enough to handle this by now. We're gonna need 40 grams. If you can't handle 40 grams, you can use 30 grams, that's okay. If you can't handle 30 grams, you can use 20 grams, but it won't be as sweet and the texture won't be the same. So just use 40 grams and, deal with the consequences later. I'm using just straight erythritol. Granular erythritol. And while this won't taste like an apple fritter without some seasonings that remind us of apple fritters, which is gonna be cinnamon and nutmeg. And apparently if you eat an entire nutmeg, you die. So, don't eat an entire nutmeg, but you can use a little bit of the powder. We're gonna need 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, very little. And we're gonna use around a half teaspoon of cinnamon. If you really like cinnamon, you could go a full teaspoon. I don't want this to punch me with cinnamon flavor. It's not a cinnamon bun, it's an apple fritter, so we need the cinnamon to be there in the background. And a little bit of salt, because salt just brings out all of the flavors. A pinch of salt. You got all your powders in the bowl, just mix this up. Get it all incorporated so it's all one color instead of, layers of sand art. It smells like an apple fritter without the apples. It smells amazing. So if this doesn't smell good at this point, you probably did something wrong, but let's move on to the next part. Take 1 apple, we're gonna need 50 grams of it. We don't want this to be apples with a little bit of dough. It's an apple fritter, so we can't just go crazy with the apples. 50 grams is perfect. If you don't like too many apples in apple fritters, well, why are you eating apple fritters? I don't like the skin in apple fritters, so I'm getting rid of it, and I'm just using the inside of the apple, 50 grams. Small cubes. So I used 3/4 of an apple to get to the 50 grams. This was a pretty small apple, so if you have a big apple or a medium-sized apple, it's probably gonna be around half of it if you don't wanna weigh it out and measure out 50 grams. But this quarter I'm gonna eat, and this, if you have a dog, you can feed it to your dog, so my dog might get some apple scraps later, and I'm also gonna eat some of them. So the 3 wet ingredients are gonna be a little bit of vanilla extract, which is completely optional. Apple fritters don't have a strong vanilla taste, so you don't need this, but I like it. I think it tastes a little bit better with it in it. 15 grams of sugar-free syrup, which is delicious, so try not to drink all of it. And also exactly 30 grams of Greek yogurt. So for traditional apple fritters, you put the apples in, you put all the wet ingredients in, you mix it all together, and no, we cannot do that. Do not do that. You're gonna overmix the dough. It's not gonna be good. This is what you're gonna do. You're gonna fold in the apples after the dough is ready. So just have the powders, put your apples to the side. We'll get to them in a bit, but add the wet ingredients to this and mix it as little as possible until it turns into a dough. So 30 grams of Greek yogurt, which is not a lot, guys. A little splash of vanilla extract. That was literally exactly 1 gram, and 15 grams of sugar-free syrup. Give this all a mix. It's gonna take a little bit of time, be patient. There's a lot more powder than liquid, but it will come together. Just be patient and mix slowly. So as soon as the dough comes together like this, and you don't see clumps of powders inside, stop mixing. We're not making pizza dough. We don't need to mix this for 2 hours and knead it. And no, it's an apple fritter. We want it light. We want it airy. We don't want to overmix and, develop gluten in the flour. Yes, this has gluten because regular flour, not coconut flour, not almond flour. So any of you who have gluten receptors that can't handle gluten, sorry. This one might not be for you, but for everyone else, it's gonna be delicious. Take all of your 50 grams of peeled, diced into small cubes apples in. There's one stuck to the bottom of the bowl. It's in now. And just give all of this a good fold. So this is what it's looking like right now. And just fold all the apples in. There we go. It is glistening. Since, I have no one to hold down parchment paper, yes, we're gonna need parchment paper because air fryers have holes on the bottom. This is a batter. If we put this in, well, we would have the apples on top and the dough underneath the air fryer basket because it's just gonna fall through. So we can't have that happen. We need some parchment paper. Spray the bottom of the parchment paper with some oil spray. Take your dough and put it right in the middle. Do not try to make a perfect circle. Have you ever gotten an apple fritter that is a perfect circle? No, apple fritters, they are completely messed up. They come in all shapes and sizes. They're always looking like a disaster, but they taste amazing. That's the best part. So, don't make it perfect. Also, very important, you need to spray the top so it gets golden brown and crispy. Spray it well. Gets tossed into the air fryer, 400 degrees for exactly 12 minutes. If you are baking it in an oven, 400 degrees, closer to 20 minutes. And you could hear the air fryer in the background, but there's a little bit of dough in here. That is freaking good. It is done baking. Oh my God, I cannot even describe the smell in this house right now. The bottom, golden brown, the top, golden brown. Do not be worried about the color. Get a paper napkin and put this on top of the paper napkin because this needs to cool for a little bit because as it cools, it's gonna harden up. It's gonna, get less wet and sloppy and more like an actual apple fritter. So it needs to cool for at least 5 minutes. And if you let it cool in parchment paper, well, the bottom's gonna get soggy. So you put a little paper towel underneath it and the paper towel absorbs all the moisture from the heat. And so it's not gonna get soggy and it's gonna be more crispy and it's gonna be more delicious. More artificial sweetener. So if you haven't seen my 0-calorie sprinkles video, check that out. But in that video, I showed you guys, if you don't have powdered sugar or powdered artificial sweetener, no big deal. Just take regular sweetener, granular sweetener, throw it in your blender, blend it up, and turn it into some powdered sugar. So it depends how much glaze you want. That's how much of this you're gonna use. 20 grams is enough for me, so I go 20 grams. And that covers the whole thing perfectly. But if you want a little more glaze, go to 30 grams and then you're gonna get a really nice thick glaze and it's gonna be amazing. And this part can get a little bit tricky because you could use water, you could use almond milk, but if you use too much, done. It's not gonna turn to a glaze, it's just gonna turn to a sweet liquid. And it's not gonna harden and get all nice on the apple fritter. So we gotta use a little bit at a time. So don't even pour it straight in. No, pour it into the cap. 1 capful. 2 capfuls. And each capful is about 3 to 4 grams. So 20 grams of powdered sweetener to 6 to 8 grams of liquid. Take your apple fritter and just spread this glaze on top like this. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nope. You just want that glaze everywhere. Guys, look at this apple fritter. It is the size of my hand. It is giant. 175 calories for this whole thing. Way bigger than any protein bar. That glaze is hard. And if you hear this, it is not soft and bready. It is like an actual apple fritter, and it's time to try this thing. Right there. Man, I'm telling you, guys, the inside is so moist. Let's go. And those apples hit you with that burst of juiciness, like bubble tea, boba, but apples. You can see how moist it is. This is not some dry protein baked good. It's so good. My favorite part is the very, very centerpiece, just like brownies, you know, this piece right here. This has to be one of the best desserts I have ever made. Protein and not protein, like that's how good it is. You will absolutely love this. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're new, and I will see you in the next video.